Hey guys, welcome back. Today I have a really simple page in my traveler's notebook. I am going to use the June Life Crafted kit and the Yes, This Is Life stamp set from Citrus Twist. Now, like I'm sure most of you, have done my fair share of extravagant eating during this whole lockdown thing, and that is what I'm going to document today. I have picked out 6 photos, and I've just created this little collage on a 4x6 photo paper, just using my phone and the Pic Frame app. It's my go-to app for creating collages or smaller size photos like this for my traveler's notebook. Super easy. I picked a 4x6 sheet and just added 6 photos. I am not going to end up using all of these, but I had 6 spaces to fill, so that's what I did. I figured I would print out 6, and I'm only going to end up using 4, but this way it gives me the ability to kind of audition them a little bit. So I'm trimming them out. There's no specific size for these. This was just what the app and my printer managed to give me, and I'm totally okay with that. I will make it work. I'm not worried about specific sizes. I will say they're like less than about 1.5 inches square. I decided there was a lot of sort of warmer tones in these photos, so I'm going to stick with kind of a yellow color scheme today. You can see me just auditioning these photos here. These are the most appropriate ones for this kind of color scheme, and I did pick out this more solid yellow paper. It's got a little diamond print on it, and I'm not actually trimming this down at the moment. I am just going to use my Tim Holtz distressing tool and just rough up all 4 edges of this 6x8 paper, and I will worry about trimming it down to fit later, but it's much easier to create this distressed edge on a larger piece than it is on a smaller piece. So I'm just doing all 4 edges at once. I'm not going to do any stitching or anything. Like everything else is going to be super flat on this page, so I did just want to do that little bit of distressing just to give it a tiny bit of dimension and a little bit of texture. So you can see there I just marked where the spine of my book is, where the middle, and I'm just going to trim that down. I don't need to distress those edges because I want this to look like one continuous bit of paper that's running across both pages of my spread. Now I'm going to stick down the left-hand side piece here after I run out of tape runner. I don't know, I feel like every time I sit down to film a process video for you guys, I run out of tape runner. I swear I get more than 1 page per tape runner, but that's what it feels like. I'm going to stick down the left-hand side here and just not quite worry about the right-hand page just yet. I will stick that down eventually, but for now I'm just going to leave it loose. I'm going to lay out, sort of audition my photos for where they want to go, but they do just look a little bit kind of lost. They need something to anchor them onto this page, and so I'm going to use a second bit of pattern paper. I'm going to use a slightly lighter yellow. The larger yellow and white floral sort of pattern I really loved, but it definitely was the wrong scale for what I'm trying to achieve here. So this pattern works really nicely. I just want to trim a tiny bit off the bottom, and I've just trimmed it so it's just a tiny bit wider than the actual photos. So what I'm going to end up doing is creating kind of like a photo strip, and I really love that technique. It anchors the photos to this page, especially when there is more than one. It kind of ties them all together. And speaking of tying things all together, that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm going to distress the edges of this strip the same way that I did my paper, and this is what I mean. It was so much easier to do the larger paper than it was this little strip. So I've got that sorted out. I'm just going to adhere these photos down. That's where they're going to live. I'm going to start with the bottom one, then do the top one, and then just work out the other 2 to make the gaps between them even. So you can see I haven't measured anything. I'm just eyeballing it all. But if you start with either end like that and work your way back into the middle, it is much easier to make sure that everything is even. Now again, I'm not going to worry about adhering that strip down just yet. I want to use my stamp set first. So the title for this page is going to be Yes and Yes. It was definitely an affirmative for all of these delicious foods. And happily enough, the stamp set was definitely the inspiration for all of this. There are two different yeses on the stamps here. One is solid and one is an outline, so you can really easily stack both of those and create your own different colored stamps, all of that sort of thing. I don't want my title to be too overwhelming for the page, and so I'm just going to stamp the outline stamp twice, and I'm not going to worry about filling it in. I am going to stamp the little solid ampersand though in the middle of that, so I decided to stamp the ampersand first. I'm going to overlap them, you see, so I want to, just to be able to eyeball where things are going, I need to work the way that the stamps are. So yes and yes. And I have stamped this title on sort of the bottom third of the page. I find it just creates a more balanced layout than if you put it more towards the middle. Now there are a ton of little food icon stamps on the stamp set, and that's what I want to use. I have pulled off 5 of them, and I'm going to fill in the gap that pattern paper leaves with some repeat stamping. I did just grab my ink swatch book, and I am putting all of these little icon stamps onto the stamp blocks that I have available. I wish I had one for each of these stamps. It would have made it a little bit easier. As it is, I've got one on each side of a couple of smaller blocks and then one on a larger block. And I'm basically just gonna use these stamps in kind of a random way and fill in the gap that pattern paper leaves. So I'm creating my own secondary pattern here. I don't need to worry about stamping the entire page because obviously a lot of that is going to be covered up. It's sort of a little bit less than half with the real pattern paper. So I'm just going to work my way from the title sort of outwards until I fill up the gap. I can keep putting that pattern paper down on top just to make sure things are aligning. But basically I just stamped randomly wherever I could, trying not to get two of those sort of icons, the same icons, too close together. And eventually it just definitely didn't take too long at all. I get that all stamped up. And then I can go ahead and adhere the other piece of that pattern paper down on top. And I love the way to get that sort of tone on tone look with this technique. Now, I didn't want to make this page like too ridiculously simple. I do want to add a little bit of embellishment on here, but I also want to keep it like stamp based. So I am just going to use a couple of these stamps that are in the stamp sets as embellishments. So there are a few different ones that have a kind of outline around them, and those are the ones that I'm going to use today. I just grabbed a little bit of scrap card. I'll be honest, it came straight out of my bin there. I thought, oh, this would be perfect. I only need tiny little strip. And I'm going to stamp 3 of these little boxed stamps on here. So I picked ones that were as relevant as I could find to my photos that I had, and I've just stamped them with some Memento Tuxedo black ink, and then I'm just going to trim them out. Now the kind of way that this works is it's going to tie my whole page together, because at the moment that title in the black ink kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. It's just kind of sitting there. So this is going to tie that all together, and I love that black and white look with the yellow. It's just a really graphic, fun sort of color scheme there. I'm going to add the largest of these stamped pieces to my title and kind of create a larger cluster. Sitting that across the stamped pattern and the pattern paper helps to tie all of those things together. And I'm going to add the other 2 on the other side, the same sort of technique. They're going to overlap my photo, the pattern paper strip, and the paper pattern background. And they're just going to tie everything all together. Before I adhere down my photo strip, I wanted to do some splatters, again to tie a bit more of that black in there and just add that kind of graphic look to it. But I just wasn't brave enough to get the actual ink, so I'm just using a gel pen. It's my tricky little trick because I'm too chicken to use actual ink splatters. I just have zero control over them. And these are much easier to control. You don't have to be too particularly precise. I am just leaving my paper pieces where they need to go, so I know roughly where about those dots can go, but I'm not worried if when I put the paper back some of those dots are going to be covered up. I just add a few more. So it's a really simple process, especially if you're not super keen on messy like I am. Plus there's zero drying time for this. It's all good to go as soon as you're finished. So I added some basically around those 3 stamped embellishments. That's what sort of gave me my, I guess it's sort of a rough sort of triangle, visual triangle there. So it just helps to bulk out those very simple embellishments. I can stick everything down now and call this page all finished. So that was a very quick page, and I love that I got some of these delicious food photos documented in my notebook. I love a good repeat pattern stamp, and it feels like it's been forever since I've done that. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there are a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you again next time. Bye guys.